Hi, this is Savannah from Chicken Soup for the Truther's Soul, and today we're going to be discussing some profound scenes from the movie that speak some resounding truth. But before we go into those scenes, I'd like to run over the plot really fast. So, in a nutshell, a huge colony of ants on Ant Island are forced to collect every piece of food that grows on their island for a group of menacing grasshoppers, the leader being Hopper. But all that changes when Flick knocks over the entire offering pile, and thus Hopper is infuriated, and they have to redo their gathering of food. In a race against time, his friends are desperate to help save the colony as well. Flick volunteers to go out into the world and search for a group of warrior bugs. And instead, what he got was a group of circus performers. But when the grasshoppers return and take control of the island, Flick must prove himself a true hero before it's too late. So, the next scene that I'm going to be playing is going to sort of brush over a spiritual concept of what the seed really means. So without further ado, let's go into this first scene.
Never gonna make a difference.
Me neither. We're royal and I can't even fly yet. It's too little.
Being little's not such a bad thing.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. It's not. Oh. A seed. I need a seed. Here. Pretend that that's a seed.
It's a rock.
Oh, I know it's a rock. I know. But let's just pretend for a minute that it's a seed, all right? Excuse me. Imagination. Now, you see our tree? Everything that made that giant tree is already contained inside this tiny little seed. All it needs is some time, and a little bit of sunshine and rain, and voila!
This rock will be a tree.
Each tree, you've got to work with her, all right? Okay. You might not feel like you can do much now, but that's just because, well, you're not a tree. You just have to give yourself some time. You're still a seed.
But it's a rock.
I know it's a rock! Don't you think I know a rock when I see a rock? I spent a lot of time around rocks!
You're weird.
So yes, indeed, you are God's seed. And besides the overarching and obviously prominent plot that is talking about how Flick needs to gather up enough seed for the offering when the grasshoppers return, obviously there's a spiritual tie-in, and it talks about how we are seed waiting to be gathered up by God, and while we are waiting, we must wait for, our fruit to be bared. And with that being said, let's go into some applicable scripture. So in the first book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 11 through 12, he says, "And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good." So I think that pretty much sums up that entire clip. And I decided to add on Matthew chapter 7, verses 17 and 20, because it directly ties in to this idea of having to have a sort of harvest before a harvest. Before God gathers up his seed, you must first realize that you have this potential to bear fruit. And with that being said, the tie-in in Matthew chapter 7, when they say, "Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit," that is sort of separate from the scene there that talks about harvesting fruit so that it can be eaten by the grasshoppers. Instead, we're not simply talking about fruit in general, we're talking about a differentiation between both fruit that can mean that you have a sort of quality about yourself that is worthy to the Lord, and whether or not you don't is, like I said, not exactly what the movie was trying to express, but more so to get you to realize that you are God's seed. And they do include a lot of scenes like this in animated movies for children, believe it or not, because even though the enemy's trying to influence you, just about as soon as you enter this world, God always finds a way to enter and spread his message. And I think that's what's going on here. And so with that being said, I'm going to go to the last verse that I'll be covering for this scene, verses 20 out of Matthew chapter 17, and it says, "Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them." So you should be able to differentiate between those qualities that make you bear fruit in other people, not only yourself. And again, I do believe there is another passage that covers, you're not just looking at one or two qualities here, you're looking at the overarching picture over a long course of time. We're not just discussing one or two events that happen here and there, we're talking about over the course of years. So you almost wouldn't be able to know someone's fruit just by simply observing them on the street. But sometimes that discernment does come into effect, and you will know them by their fruit immediately. With that being said, we're going to go into the next scene, which discusses our place in society and how they'd like to keep us unaware of our potential by letting us always be harvesting for someone else instead of preparing for us to be harvested by the Lord.
Who was that man that stood up to me? Yeah, but we can forget about him. Yeah, it was just one ant. You're right. It's just one ant. Yeah, boss. They're puny. Puny? Say, let's pretend this queen is a puny little ant. Does that hurt? Nope. How about this one? Are you kidding? How about this? You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay?
So as you heard, Hopper's main objective is not only to keep the ants working for him, the food is not the point. Food is not the point. The main goal is that they know their place in society and they keep it that way so they will never realize their true potential and furthermore, spiritually, never develop any said fruit, as I've mentioned. With that being said, we're going to cover a few quotes of some world leaders and what they had to say as it regards to keeping the ants in line. So our first quote is from Henry Ford, and he says, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." The next quote by John D. Rockefeller says, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers." What a bizarre idea from which our current society has bosomed out of, or rather birthed out of. My apologies. And a quote from Henry Kissinger relating to the reality of our world and furthermore what they'd like to create. "The New World Order cannot happen without U.S. participation, as we are the most significant single component. Yes, there will be a New World Order, and it will force the United States to change its perceptions." That song Ready or Not by the Fugees comes to mind. Yes, that was more propaganda given to us by Lauryn Hill, a famous artist from the 1990s. And our final quote is from George H.W. Bush, and he is, I'm sure he needs no introduction, as this speech is pretty well known across the truth community, but alas, I decide to include it as it's very, 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 very pertinent, not only to when he said it, but our current situation. So that being said, let's go ahead and go right into it. "We stand today at a unique and extraordinary moment. The crisis offers a rare opportunity to move toward a historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace, an era in which the nations of the world, East and West, North and South, can prosper and live in harmony." Now, if you're paying attention to any news networks, which I don't blame if you are not, but if you've heard, the sentiment lately has rang very akin to this quote given by George H.W. Bush, I believe. One of the first times he gave it was September 11th, there goes that cryptic date, 1991. So, and all it takes is a simple search, and you'll see these quotes sort of repeat themselves with world leaders and a la globalists. So, with that being said, we're going to head into the next scene, which is going to sum up sort of the fate that these world leaders met and will meet as they plot out our disaster without anyone's consent, but as they inform us, they believe that that gives them consent if we do not hear what they're truly saying.
You think it's over?
No, I can explain.
All your little stuff did was buy them time.
Please, Hopper.
I'll get more grasshoppers and be back next season, but you won't. Well, what's this? Another one of your little bird tricks? Are there a bunch of little girls in this one too? Hello,
So the trap that they set for us, they will fall in every time. It's inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. And it's, again, biblical. To sum up that entire last scene, you can directly apply this scripture, but you can also apply this scripture to any other area of your life in which you're needing help in discerning who are truly these wheat and tares. So, we're going to draw from the chapter Matthew chapter 13 out of Matthew, I apologize, verses 24 through 30, starting with verse 24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servants said unto them, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So that almost needs no explanation, but it explains the entire outcome of anyone who thinks that they're doing something in secret, anything that people will not soon know and come to pass in their conscious and in their spirit. People will be reprimanded for their sins, and they will be held accountable, and they will be singled out. They will be singled out from the true wheat. And with that being said, I want to wish you guys a good day, and I want to say that this video is not something that I put together on my own, but I want to give thanks to God and Jesus Christ for inspiring me to put these things together. And I hope that you have a great day, my brethren and sisters.